Hey everyone, thanks Promo Public for having me. Excited to talk about kind of a new series I created called Let's Be Frank, the real talk on franchise marketing. I know a bunch of you probably know who I am already, but for those of you who I might not have bugged all over LinkedIn, my name is Madeleine Park, but my new married name is Madeleine Zook. I'm a multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee in the greater Philadelphia area. My husband and I own 4 different franchise home service brands. Depending on how you cut up territory, we have anywhere between 15 to 50 locations. And we've been doing that for over a decade now. Formerly, I was with Threshold as their director of brands. They're an umbrella brand in the home services, and I was there for about a decade, so definitely understand the supplier side. And now I'm currently a franchise advisor and the director of marketing at Netsertive, which is a digital marketing supplier in the franchise space. So a little bit of a unicorn, see things from all different angles, which is why, I'm very keen on making sure that whatever I coach on is the real deal, because I see the headaches from all over. So without further ado, we will get started, and feel free to ask questions. I'll have Danielle kind of alert me as they come up. All right, so here's the agenda. I only have half hour, which I'm not used to, so I might talk fast, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to take a phone call or, whatever, if you have questions during or after. So we're going to talk about data. We're going to talk about marketing revenue generators on the franchisor side. The National Advertising Fund, as we all know, a gift and a curse. And then bonus at the end, we're going to talk about killers of marketing campaigns, things that really, really bring the marketing down, even though we like to get blamed for everything. So first and foremost, we are leaning in on the data. And what does this mean? Everyone talks about data. Yeah. Data is important. It really is. What's also important is kind of understanding and getting a feel for your local region, for things that people might not be able to quantify. That said, if you are a marketing leader or an exec, your job is to holistically understand both the feelings and the data. With that said, it's very important that if you're able to do that, you have someone or a group of people, on the team that can dig into every piece of your data. Your key performance indicators will set your benchmarks, and they are going to vary by region and channel. It's really unfortunate when I see franchisors say, okay, well, we should be seeing an average cost per lead of $70. Well, what if this brand is a seasonal business and you're seeing a cost per lead, $70 is going to range drastically if you're in Texas or in Maine. So that's something to be aware of. You might want to break up your benchmarks by region and for sure by channel, because your direct mail is going to have a different benchmark than your PPC, for instance. You should know your data better than anybody else, in and out, back and forth. And I say this because so many times we hear franchisees, well, this isn't working. Well, the vendor doesn't work. Well, I know I'm going to get a lot of leads if I sponsor that little league banner way out in left field. And although they might be following the model, oftentimes with marketing is where they like to get a little creative. So, what I say to that is, if you know your benchmarks in and out, then you can coach to that, meaning, no, this is exactly why we want you to follow the model. We've tried this, we've tried that. If you do this, you're going to see that. And again, yes, that takes someone that's detail oriented, that digs into the data, and that can coach your team, the rest of your team on it. Maybe coach your coaches on that. But on the flip side of that, knowing your data is allowing your franchisees to get creative, but you're still going to hold them responsible for hitting those benchmarks. So for instance, you're seeing an average cost per lead of $150 for guerrilla marketing. That's what you see, and that's what you see in the Northeast region. If you have a franchisee that's saying, nope, I'm going to get a ton of ROI on that left field banner, then you can say, all right, well, here's the deal. this is exactly why we are telling you where to spend your money. Here's what you should see. And we are assuming that if you spend this in this channels, you're going to get this amount of clients. Since you are choosing, or if you want to not follow that model and you're really set on doing that banner, that's great. But we're going to hold you responsible for hitting the benchmarks, meaning if you do hit them and it's great, that's awesome. You are right. And you are helping us look at a new channel potentially to explore moving forward. If you don't hit it, then that's okay too, but you are responsible for not hitting that number, because a lot of the times they will go back and be like, well, I spent the money and it didn't come through. And you're like, well, yeah, because no one looks in the left field, Little League banner. So it gives your franchisees the idea of it's your money, it's your business, you can be creative, but these are the benchmarks that we are taking responsibility for, that we're coaching to. If you do better than us, great. We want that. We want to find other avenues that are going to work. But if they don't, then they can't come back and say, that falls on you. While they will, you can then reiterate the conversation of, we agreed to explore this avenue. We now know probably not the best lead generator, but it might have been great for brand awareness. So, that's a good way to approach that, instead of you must, or no, because franchisees, I am one of them, like a kid, if you tell me no, I'm doing it. So, that's just a good way to go about that. And then use your benchmarks to vet new suppliers and keep a pulse on new ones. I see so many times franchisors sign on a new vendor and then they kind of say, okay, go. And the vendor might be getting different numbers. Maybe they're lower, maybe they're higher, maybe they're not consistent. If you're not keeping a close eye on what your previous benchmarks are, what your goals are, and you're not constantly vetting that or auditing it, then you're going to lose control of your data. And as soon as you lose any sort of control, starting fresh, weeding through is a very time and labor intensive task that is going to drastically pull away from your growth, because there's no way to quantify it, because so-and-so took over and now we don't have access to the dashboards and we weren't keeping an eye on what we think it should be or what competitors are seeing. So it's really important that you're not just passing the keys and going to vendors. And it's also okay to vet them or pit them kind of against each other. That's kind of making the businesses or making the partners compete and work on your behalf. Everyone wants to win the business. Maybe you have 3 vendors to choose from and they're all competing for your support system or your franchise network. And so you say, hey, whoever can get the lowest, cost per acquisition, we're going to feature you at the convention or, whatever it may be. But that also allows you guys to have a gut check on what the true data is, what you're seeing, and not have it be skewed in one way or another. Because unfortunately, a lot of times with vendors, they're going to show you what they think you want to hear. They're going to show you the clicks. They're going to show you the impressions and all of the stuff that doesn't necessarily put money in your pocket. So full transparency on the numbers is the most important. So again, not really something that you guys probably don't know already, but something that I wanted to reiterate, because a lot of the times, as you know, you're dealing with different personalities, how different people communicate, how they want to be communicated with, how they want to run their business. And you can't quantify that, but you can efficiently control the narrative by understanding those numbers back and forth or back and front. So that's my little spiel on leaning in on your data. Next, we're going to talk about in-house or shared services and how they can drive revenue. And what they mean by that is that there are options and there are ways for franchisors to create revenue aside from the franchise fees and the royalties. So for instance, there is an opportunity with shared services or what is known as vendor kickbacks. So If you sign a deal with a partnership, doesn't necessarily have to be marketing. A lot of times it is in marketing, say like a promotion company that does the swag. If you have a exclusive deal with them and it's listed in the FDD and your franchisees have to use that vendor, well, you're giving that vendor exclusive rights to a very consistent stream of revenue and business that's going to continue to grow over time. So oftentimes you can negotiate a kickback or some sort of revenue percentage that you can bring in from those sales. That is a nice little way to contribute to your bottom line and not have to rely on all of the franchise fees that are coming in. Outside of that, another way you can do it is building in-house systems that can actually generate revenue. So if you have an outstanding creative team that is just, pumping out custom creative for every one of your franchisees, maybe that might be something that you can charge for. I'm definitely not on the team nickel and dime your franchisees, but if you're constantly investing in a very robust program that's going to better your system, the only way that it can get better is if you continue investing in it. So for instance, when I was at MadePro, we had an AMS team, which was Advanced Marketing Services. So it was an opt-in service where they could pay to have the in-house team run their SEO, their Google pages, their reviews. And it was a great way to generate a little bit of revenue. The team members, I believe, could get a portion of the ad spend commission. So it gave them an extra kind of, perk to their job. And then also they had all of the data, they knew the brand, they knew the franchisees personally. So by offering that, one level above the generic marketing support, we were able to drive revenue. And in fact, most of the franchisees ended up wanting to use the in-house system because of what I just mentioned. And it also allowed the franchisor to have greater access to, again, the data to be able to coach and make changes and not necessarily have to go through a third party. So that is another way to kind of increase your revenue. I think a lot of times when brands are growing, if they don't have the backing from, legacies or years of growth or private equity, they're saying, well, we're waiting for those royalties to come in. We can't invest more. I can't bring on brokers because I need those franchise fees. Little things like this are not necessarily frowned upon, especially if you truly believe that you're offering a greater service that a vendor or a regular other franchisor could provide. So definitely something you want to look into. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I know I'm moving and grooving pretty fast here. But next we're going to talk about the National Advertising Fund, a gift and a curse. We love to hate it. I don't know what's going on with, there we go. So your National Advertising Fund, and a lot of brands operate these vastly differently, but for the sake of this meeting, I want you to assume that your National Advertising Fund should always take the front seat. I see a lot of times that franchisors, they do get the 1 to 2%, that goes right into the fund. And then it just kind of becomes a war chest and it sits there. And it's a great fund for, maybe we want to experiment. Maybe we want to do a branded bus. Maybe we need, all of a sudden we have this opportunity and we need to jump on it. And that's great to have that in your back pocket. But the National Advertising Fund is there to expand your brand, and it doesn't have any ties to return on investment as desperately as your franchisees do. And what I mean by that is you're not spending your National Advertising Fund and saying, oh my God, we need to get 50 consumer leads off this, right? It's really for the brand awareness. And it is the brand awareness that is bringing in franchise development growth. It's allowing your franchisees to lean on that brand. So if you're not constantly using the National Advertising Fund to grow and to create awareness, then you're just relying on your franchisees to do that for you. And it really needs to be the other way around. You should always be able to present a campaign that you have, whether it is literally just your Google PPC keywords, or it's something, flashy like an area takeover with billboards and mailers. There's a ton of different things you can do, but it really should be always on, because franchisees are going to ask, and it doesn't need to be flashy. I think a lot of franchisees want the flashy stuff. They want to see the Super Bowl ad. They want to see, the commercial on Hulu, and that's great avenues to explore. But most of the time, your bread and butter is going to be the same thing that you do that you coach on for your franchisees. Your digital PPC, you're spending money on the SEO. Maybe you're doing great video assets that you can share out with the rest of your community. So don't think of it as necessarily a war chest that you're going to spend on a one and done. There's many different ways to go about it, but again, the money should be being used at all times. You can't use it for anything else. Sure, maybe save a portion of it for that fun, exciting venture that the CEO drops in your lap and says, I need a branded van. But that is definitely something that I see a lot of franchisors miss out on. Danielle, it looks like there's a hand raised.
Yes, I have a question for you over in the chat here. So a little bit of a pivot, but recommendations for average cost for charging franchisees for in-house creative services.
So this is going to vary a lot by the services that you are providing and the size of your business. So there are different ways to do that. I won't be able to necessarily give you a flat cost because, like I said, it varies so vastly, but you can do a flat fee, which I will say is usually most preferred, especially if you're going to do it on a recurring monthly like it's added to their royalty bill. If you do that monthly, you could do a flat fee that might be more clear for franchisees when they look over their invoice. And if it's more of a, I'm getting my creative services done, I'm getting my video assets done. Once you start venturing into the paid space, you can maybe lower that cost structure. Maybe it's an onboarding fee, and then you take a percentage of the person's ad spend, because then they're still controlling, how much money is going out of their pocket. And for newer franchisees, obviously the less the better on that. And it's also how most other suppliers and vendors charge. So you can kind of be aligned on that. For myself, I like a flat fee because it's easy to build into our business model and less variable. But again, those are the two different ways that you can do that. And then I also say the last thing on the national advertising front is you should always save a portion of your funds for exploratory findings and report back on them to your franchisees. Don't wait for your franchisees to ask, what about TikTok? What about CTV? You want to always be ahead of the curve for them so that when they approach you, and this is the same thing that we talked about for a single location and leaning in on your data, that you can say, yep, we actually are testing this, or we tested this, and this is why we're not using it. If you're able to provide a logical, factual answer, the more the franchisees are going to understand, okay, because realistically, at the end of the day, they just want as many leads as possible. They already trust you to be leading them in the right direction. And of course, there's going to be things that they bring up that you might not have tried, but being able to say, yes, we did this and here's the results, or no, we haven't done this, but we do have, funds left over in Q4. Do you want us to put together a committee and, we'll test this, for instance, TikTok, or, influencers. So that is definitely something that franchisees feel that they can be a part of, while also not having to feel like they need to take the lead or needing to push you on. So that's another great use of the National Advertising Fund. I think a lot of the times it's this big money bag in the sky, and the clearer and more transparent you can be about the use of it, the better off you're going to be. So bonus, we are going to talk about for the last 15 minutes, what is killing your marketing campaigns. So like I kind of stated before, sometimes it's not all your fault. It's not marketing's fault. I feel like no matter if it's top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, if it doesn't work, well, we didn't do that correctly. Marketing didn't bring in the right people. Marketing didn't bring in enough people. And I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your heads right now. And here are some things that I want to talk about that should be really, really paid close attention to, and communicated with your execs or heads of departments, because it can really be a motivation killer, a data killer, and ultimately a marketing killer. So keep a watchful eye on your sales operations. So many times I hear, well, they're not moving through the funnel. They're not closing. These leads aren't qualified. They're not, they're getting to franchise development discovery days, and, we realize they don't have enough money, and, why are we advertising places we don't have, the list goes on and on. And the truth is that marketing, for the most part, is in charge of the top of the funnel. We are trying to get as many leads in your hands as possible. And in I mean probably your sales team. Our job is then to assist on keeping that brand top of mind, continuing through the funnel, but not to necessarily nurture and close them. That is your sales job. If your salespeople are not providing best of best sales service, then those qualified leads are going to walk out the door. And they might not even give a reason. It might be a bullshit reason that you're like, okay, well, clearly they weren't a good candidate. No, they might not have been being treated very well in the sales pipeline. Are your leads coming in, and are you getting back to them within 24 hours, even on a weekend? Are your leads coming in? And I'm talking Fran Dev now. And are your leads coming in and, after hours when they're off of work, but your sales team isn't going to contact them because they're off work too. So these are all things that you need to think about. And it's the same thing goes with employee marketing and consumer marketing, because if you think about it, we're working 9 to 5s typically, and so is everyone else. So when they're exploring, services they need, products, oftentimes it's during their off hours. So do you have a call center that can meet those extended hours? Do you have, opportunities to continue to connect and be, front of the line when they're ready to make a purchase, even if it's not, necessarily in the exact times that you would like. So that is something that's super important. And another thing that I like to coach on is whether you're taking your calls at the home office, you're using an offshore call center, you're using a top marketing supplier, IFA call center. You have to understand that sales is super interpersonal. So you could have a great sales team in Texas, and they're answering the phone, hey y'all, and the people in Massachusetts are going, no, this is not local. So pay attention to your dialect, pay attention to your scripts, pay attention to your training, and hold people accountable. If they are not closing, then don't hold on to them and let them go, because the better your salesperson, the better the close ratio, and that's going to help marketing see where the importance spends are. Because if they're not closing across, then you're just going to have to keep pumping more and more money in, because you're going to need bigger volume leads, because you're not closing when you should be. The second is making sure your service or your product is living up to the hype. So I think that there's, typically the cliche, oh, marketing and sales are always in a fight. But I think with franchising, a lot of the times you see pushback from marketing and operations, because marketing is saying, we've got this great brand, we're a family, where you get the same cleaner every time you're out there, and we're doing this 49-point checklist, and we're providing XYZ and the extra sparkle. Well, are you delivering on that? Because if you're not constantly delivering on that, then the marketing message needs to change. And that doesn't mean you necessarily failed, but you never want the customer to feel like they were, bait and switch. You told me I was going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, and I only got 2. And now you're going to leave a bad review. And that might not necessarily be on the operations. It might just be that we were over promising and under delivering. So make sure that you're constantly having a connection between the operations and the marketing to ensure that they're able to live up to whatever promises you're making. And vice versa. If they're doing great work and you're getting these great reviews, then marketing needs to know that so that they can advertise that as well. If you have a franchisee out there that's getting 5-star, 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 5-star service, before and after shots, whatever it may be, you need to tell marketing that, because they need to tell the rest of the world, and nothing else speaks more volumes than, a happy customer. So it's very, very imperative that your operations and your marketing are consistently syncing up. Otherwise, you're going to get either disgruntled customers or, great franchisees that aren't growing because they're not able to get it out there, or they're not aware of, the avenues to do so. And lastly, platforms have bugs, campaigns can break. How many times have you been told, oh my God, we launched this landing page and the call to action button doesn't work, and we launched it 2 weeks ago, or so-and-so's ad spend has been paused for the last, 90 days because they have 10 locations and no one caught it. Even in this day and age where we've got AI, the chatbots, automation, it is extremely important that you have someone that is constantly monitoring your platforms, checking your campaigns, not necessarily, I would say, optimizing that, because that can come or go with automation and it is very time intensive, but have someone that's checking in on any spend that you're doing. You wouldn't give your kid a credit card and just say, all right, here you go, and only buy candy with it and then never check it again. So whether it's in-house, whether you have someone that's coaching on your franchisees, your vendors, you need to hold your spend accountable, and you need to hold yourself accountable for the spend. So you don't want any sort of excuse when it comes to, well, I just spent, my $40,000 for my seasonal marketing, and you put the wrong phone number in the ad. That doesn't help anyone. Yes, mistakes happen, but the quicker that they can be caught, the easier it is. And I know that sounds like, well, that's so obvious. But I guarantee you will face that at least once every, season, especially when you have multiple campaigns with multiple franchisees and even multiple brands running. So cross your T's and dot your I's there. So that is my presentation. I know I talked very quickly, and it was just a kind of let's be frank about these topic things that I get asked a lot. So that we have, I think, 5 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them my way. It can be on anything that we talked about or not, or any other questions that we may have. Happy to chat, whether it's, franchisee, franchisor, or supplier, for sure. And Danielle, thank you for moderating. I know that is not an easy job, for sure. Thanks, Diane. Everyone check out Diane Davis. She just got a new role as a CEO. Looking forward to all of the work that she's going to do there.
Thank you, Maddie. I'm eating lunch. That's why my video's not on.
You're all good. You're all good. And I
I'm
would say
eating the last of a Happy and Healthy frozen fruit bar, which is my new company. They sent me like 200 of them as a gift.
Love that.
Thank goodness they're healthy, because I'm doing my part to put them away, let me tell you.
That's great. And yeah, if you guys want to hear more in depth about what, industry specific and brand specific brands are doing, I have a podcast called The Art of Franchise Marketing, and we talk all things franchise marketing, from big brands to small brands. And I'm really, really, because I've seen it on all sides, I'm very committed to creating a community of franchisors that can talk to one another. I think that's something I was missing. And I think it's super important for us to continue in the franchising space. We just had
And-
Ira on, his episode's launching soon. Yes, Diane.
Maddie, my question for you is, and I am not versed at this time because we didn't do this at JBF,
Mhm.
in having vendor programs where you're charging, the word vendor kickback is such an ugly sounding term.
Sure.
I think it's because we've made it that way, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
because there have been people that have abused that, and that this may be a whole other session as to how you even get started with something like that, because I would agree, and I look over at Happy and Healthy, there is a company out of Houston that makes our product, it's this hand chopped fruit. We're ordering 100% of our product out of this facility. Our people get their product from this facility, and trying to determine how that could be a mutually beneficial relationship. So do you have any suggestions on getting that kind of thing started? Or is that just another seminar and we'll have to schedule one of those?
It definitely is. And I could talk no matter, what topic it is. But briefly, I would say, usually it comes around a product like the one you have. When it comes to services, a lot of the times there's no real kickback because the percentages can differ.
Okay.
And that's just kind of not what's happening in, say, a marketing world. When it comes to products, or, we have I say bug company, but a mosquito control company, where your franchisees are buying, maybe equipment that's vital and expensive to their businesses. Maybe it's even all the way down to swag. The thing is that there's a lot of competitors out there. And when it comes to something as valuable as, something that's needed to run their business, you want to have a good control on that as a franchisor. So ideally, you are limiting it to one, if not maybe a couple preferred vendors. Now, if that's the case, then a lot of the times what we would do is we would tell the competitors, look, ideally, we'd want to just go with one. So during our training, we can say, this is who you have to, but this is where you get it. But in doing that, you're giving them a lot of business. So a lot of the times with the preferred vendors or the required vendors, you can get a lot of pricing down if you're saying, well, I'll only work with you, but I want, 40% off of this or that. And in doing so, you're going to get, all of our business, XYZ. So what I mean by that is, you can drive prices down. You could have more than one. And ideally, you can just be very transparent with them as, hey, we're looking for one, we're looking for two, because we're giving you all of this business. And a lot of the times it's for our startup franchisees. Is there a rebate program? Is there a kickback that we can mutually benefit from? So that we can continue, this partnership and streamline the operations. And how you can frame that for franchisees is, we went out and did all the vetting for you. Yes, we get a percentage of that back, but most of that is so that we can continue investing in finding proper vendor partnerships so we can cover anything that might be missing. We can cover a delta here. And so it's not that we're getting, we're double dipping. It's that we are, getting our investment back and making sure that you guys have the best equipment and the best pricing possible. So that's kind of my brief stint there. Ira, go ahead.
I would say one add on these for us, we don't get the rebates because for us, it's all about negotiating the lowest rate for our franchisees and
Sure.
using that. But for us, if we were to do that, it would go back in a marketing fund to benefit them anyway.
For sure.
So
And
if we were to get some sort of rebate, it would go back in our marketing fund so that we can maybe pay for additional artwork or things like that. So it's
Yeah.
not like it goes into our pocket. I think that's the one misconception that when we do our discovery days, that's that one misconception is that money's going to go into my pocket. It doesn't. It goes back into the pot that serves you guys.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Maria asked, what would you suggest a franchisee spend on local area marketing in addition to the NAF? Well, they're not really spending, they're not responsible for the NAF. Sure, they pay their 1% or 2%. But that's kind of in their mind, that's just rolled into the royalty, I would say. They're not assuming that that spend is necessarily going to their local community. So it really, it depends on what your service is, if it's seasonal, if it's not. I would look at, Maria, your cost per acquisition. No, I would say cost per lead across the system, and then how many leads it's going to take to grow or sustain, depending on what your franchisees' growth goals are. And then you can multiply it that way. So kind of build your budget backwards. It's more adjacent, or it's more in line kind of doing that with franchise development. But I think if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out where they should spend, looking at, a benchmark of even a competitor of what they're looking to pay. And if you're struggling with that, you can even think, all right, well, how much do we think that it will cost to get an X number of impressions? And we know that customer needs to see things now 7 to 10 times. There's calculators out there that can say, all right, to get this many impressions, which is generally the time it takes for you to convert, is something that you can use to cross multiply out as well. And Alex, my baby is great. She's 10 weeks old. She's waking me up all sorts of the night. I will not be in Atlanta this year because I'm breastfeeding, and no one needs to see that at the bar. But hopefully I'll make it next year.